NARC was a violent run-and-gun shooter that was one of the first that was targeted by parents because of its content.
So in NARC, you play as two heavily armed, I might add, narcotics agents, who on each level are out to either kill or arrest a certain number of these types of dealers.
Drugs are bad, because in the game you're basically beating drug lords, but guns and violence and killing people, not so bad.
If you look on it, it just says no, not just say no. No, they couldn't get the license rights to the just say no sort of campaign, which is funny.
The game was already pretty violent, but when you shot him with a missile launcher, you just body parts everywhere.
And then what are you supposed to do with the hot furry? You're supposed to run over all the drug dealers.
If Nancy Reagan could make a video game and she was, you know, had the mindset of Arnold Schwarzenegger, this is the game that she would want to make.
Very difficult game. It's fun. It's a product of its time. NARC, just say no. Excuse me, just no.
So Castlevania II came out, and of course after the first Castlevania you're expecting more of the same awesome level-based gameplay, but you didn't get that.
In the first Castlevania, Dracula put a curse on Simon before he was defeated, so in this game, Simon's got to find the 5 body parts of Dracula and put him back together, revive him, and then beat him again.
You have to go around and get like his ribs and his eyes and his heart, and they allow you to do different things. The ribs act as a better shield, the eyes allow you to see secret blocks, and it's pretty open to explore.
You can go anywhere, well, almost anywhere, go to towns, talk to people, buy items, level up. It's very RPG-ish.
You would extend your whip and the whip strength and your hit points and all of this.
But the only problem is that none of the townspeople make any sense.
They got a really bad translation. People don't realize that, I don't think everyone realizes that kanji takes up a lot less space than the English language. So when translating certain things like hints, it just wasn't possible to put an entirely decipherable hint in a box.
How in the hell would you know to kneel down at the end of a thing so a whirlwind can come and pick you up and bring you to a different part of the
By the text that was poorly translated.
Nobody has ever gotten through this game without a guide. I guarantee it.
It's a game that needs a walkthrough. Once you have that though, it is a very fun game.
Castlevania II had an interesting day-night mechanic. In the day, the enemies weren't as bad. In night, they were harder and more frequent.
You know what else I really liked is how the game would just grind to a stop and tell you that it's turning into night or turning back into day, and while the text slowly draws across the screen. It's like, why can't I skip this?
Right.
The music is great.
Music that continues to live on in Castlevania games, or at least continue to until Castlevania kind of just shit itself.
That's Castlevania II, Simon's Quest, the quest of Simon, questing to find Dracula's testicles.
True love. 1988, SSI releases Pool of Radiance for the PC.
It took from the actual Advanced Dungeons & Dragons rule set, things that Wizardry and Ultima could only vaguely do without getting a lot of people pissed off at them.
And it started like any RPG. You would roll your characters, pick your classes.
So you could have 6 people in your party that you put together, you could customize them, you could customize their little battle sprites.
It felt like you were playing Dungeons & Dragons on a computer.
It was masterful in fleshing out the world you were in. It described so much of what was going on. You had to interact with a lot of people and discover, you know, plot lines going through in this story. It was very, very impressive.
I just think that it's cool that the complexity of role-playing games in terms of all the rule books, all the things you can do, you can now simplify it into a computer game. Pool
of Radiance is the first of the SSI Gold Box games.
The interesting thing about the Gold Box series, and it was done before in Wizardry, but you could transfer all your characters from one Gold Box game over to the next.
This is a rough time for Western RPGs in general, but the SSI Gold Box games were overall a pretty bright light, keeping that alive.
If you were a Dungeons & Dragons player, this is what you wanted and nothing else was going to do.
It would also simulate the wedges you get in middle school when you're playing Dungeons & Dragons. Was that part of the computer experience?
I believe it was, actually, yes.
Ghostbusters on the NES was like the E.T. from the 2600. It was an extremely popular movie. that was terrible when put on a home console.
Ghostbusters for the NES was originally made by Activision, released on many platforms back in 1984. So already it's a bit dated.
What makes this game so bad is that even to get to the actual Ghostbusters, you have to drive in these awful, almost never-ending sequences where you can run out of gas.
The goal of the game was to stock up on equipment and make money to complete your goal, which is just busting ghosts.
Enough PKE energy stores up, and then the Zool building.
You inexplicably have to mash buttons as you climb the stairs. If you've made it that far, congratulations. The game sucks on Nintendo.
Also, Ghostbusters has perhaps the worst case of English in any video game I've ever seen.
Congratulations, you have completed a great game.
And proved, 2 O's, the justice of our culture.
Now go and rest our heroes.
You know what I'm afraid of? Ghostbusters on the NES.
And now the gaming innovation for 1988.
How do I get the bits out? Ah, hello. Welcome to the gaming innovation of 1988. What new technology graced the world and changed the face of gaming forever? King's Quest IV, The Perils of Rosella, had a trio of innovations this year. It was the first graphical computer game to have a female protagonist. It was one of the first computer games to have sound card support, and it was the only King's Quest game to have a real-time 24-hour day-night cycle. Some puzzles could only be solved during the day, and others only at night. Pain in the I know. That does it for the gaming innovation of 1988. I'll be seeing you next year, and don't forget, it's not just nostalgia, it's science. Here.